Hi, I'm Grandma Lorie with another Bible story about Abram in Egypt. After Abram and his people had lived in the Promised Land for a while, there was a great famine in that land, just like in their old land. It did not rain, so there wasn't enough food to keep all the people alive, or enough grass for the animals to eat. So Abram prayed and was told to take his people and animals and travel down to the land of Egypt. There was always food in Egypt because the great Nile River watered the land all year. So again, Abram's people packed up and moved south. When they got close to Egypt, Abram prayed to God for guidance. He always prayed to God for guidance, and then he did whatever the Lord told him to do, even if it was very, very hard or painful, and even often strange. "Lord," said Abraham, "we are almost in Egypt. Do you have any instructions for me?" God spoke to him in return.
"Abram, look at your wife. You see how beautiful she is. She is the most beautiful woman anyone has ever seen. The Pharaoh of Egypt is going to want to take her for his wife, and the only way he can get her is to kill you. I have made great promises to you, Abram, so I want you to stay alive."
Abram knew God was right. "But Lord, how can I keep the Egyptians from killing me? There are millions of them and only a few hundred of us." God replied,
"Abram, when you lived in heaven, before this life, you were a son of God, which you know. In heaven, Sarai was your spirit sister, a daughter of God. Here on earth, she is also your half-sister. So when you get to Egypt, let Sarai tell the Egyptians that she is your sister, and they will not try to kill you, and it will be the truth."
So Abram went to Sarai and told her what the Lord had said. Sarai loved Abram dearly and loved the Lord as much as he did. "Oh, Abram, this frightens me. If Pharaoh thinks I'm your sister, he may not kill you, but what will he do with me?" "Sarai, my darling, if we both have faith and trust in the Lord, you will be protected somehow. Do you believe that?" "Yes, my husband, I do. I will be brave, so your life will be spared." It was just as the Lord had said. When they came into the borders of Egypt, the Egyptian guards saw Sarai's beauty and went to tell the nobles in the nearby city that the most beautiful woman in the world had just entered Egypt. The nobles and princes immediately came to visit Abram's caravan. When they saw Sarai, they had to agree she was gorgeous. They could tell that Abram was the head of the whole caravan, so they asked him, "Who is this beautiful woman by your side?" Abram said,
"You may ask her that for yourself."
So they asked Sarai who she was. She said, "I am Sarai, the sister of Abram." This pleased the nobles. Pharaoh was always looking for beautiful women to add to his many wives. Pharaoh would be happy to learn about this new beauty and would reward his nobles for telling him about her. They sent messengers to Pharaoh right away. Soon, the servants of Pharaoh came to Abram, inviting him and his sister Sarai to dinner at the palace. Pharaoh gave Abram lots and lots of presents, money and cattle and sheep and extra servants. He wanted Abram to be his friend because he planned on snatching Sarai and putting her right into his harem of women. And that's just what he did. Do you know what a harem is? It's a place in a royal palace where the king keeps all of his wives, many wives. They can have anything they want, but they can never, never leave. Oh no, Sarai would be stuck there like a prisoner. Sarai was terrified of what would happen to her there, but she prayed to the Lord to protect her from Pharaoh. Abram begged Pharaoh many times to let her go, but Pharaoh just kept giving Abram more expensive presents and would not let Sarai leave his harem. He was sure that if he kept on giving Abram presents, Abram would finally break down and let him marry Sarai. Then a strange thing happened. Every time Pharaoh decided to go and make love to Sarai, he would get sick. A plague of boils would break out in his body, and then he didn't feel like visiting anyone. That happened time after time after time, and pretty soon it started happening to all the men who lived in the palace too. They would all have a plague of boils. This went on for a couple of dreadful years. During that time, Pharaoh visited with Abram often, and Abram taught him a lot about the true God and the heavens and the stars in the galaxy. Knowing how powerful Abram's God was, Pharaoh started to form a hunch in his mind. Even though he was in awful pain, Pharaoh went to see Sarai again. He demanded to know if she knew anything about this plague that had come on the men of the palace. "Yes," said Sarai, "I do know why you have this plague. It's because you kidnapped me and tried to force me to become your wife when I didn't want to be your wife. Besides, I cannot ever be your wife because I am already married." "What?" cried Pharaoh. "You mean you are the reason I have suffered all this time? Who is your husband?" "Abram is my husband, and he is the most righteous man I know. I love him and only him. I don't care about your money or your palaces or your gifts or even being your queen. I want to go back to my husband. And as long as you keep me here like a prisoner, you are going to have a plague of boils. What's more, if you dare to harm my husband, our God will do worse to you than boils, I promise you." Pharaoh was furious, but he believed her and stomped out of the room in great anger. He sent his servants to bring Abram to the palace immediately. When Abram came in, Pharaoh was stalking angrily up and down the room and didn't even give Abram a chance to bow. "Abram, how dare you deceive me? Why didn't you tell me Sarai was your wife? You let me think that I might have her for my own wife. Look at the harm you've caused to me and my men with all this plague of boils." He clapped his hands, and guards brought Sarai into the throne room. Pharaoh pointed her and said to Abram, "There she is, your wife. Take her and get yourselves out of Egypt before the sun sets tomorrow, or you and all your people will be sorry. Now get out of my sight. Guards, go with him and make sure that every person, every sheep and cow and tent and pot and sandal he owns is out of my lands before the next sunset. I want nothing left in Egypt that belongs to him." So Abram took his beloved Sarai and all his people and animals and all their belongings, plus all of Pharaoh's gifts, and left Egypt immediately. They traveled back up to their promised land. Abram was now very, very rich with all the gifts Pharaoh had given him. Abram had not cheated Pharaoh because he taught Pharaoh the true gospel, which is worth more than wealth. When Abram's people got back to their promised land, they settled in a place called Bethel, and there Abram built an altar. He and Sarai and all their people made sacrifices to God and thanked the Lord with all their hearts for deliverance from the famine and from the wrath of Pharaoh. That's the end of this part of the story of Abram, but he had lots more adventures. Next time, I will tell you the exciting story of Abram and 5 kings who lived in the cities of the plains, and about a great battle and a miraculous escape.